more so that they can do more and grow more. So with that said, what I'd like to do is kind of start to go around. Maybe Tony, you want to jump in since you don't have a call and kind of give some of your backstory in that.
Sure. My wife and I decided in 1995 to start getting in real estate when we had our first child. My wife was an engineer at General Motors, and we decided, to go ahead and have her quit that job. She was 26 at the time, and we felt it was better for one parent to stay home and raise the kids. And so we decided my wife would do that. But then we found ourselves with a deficit of income. So we started looking into real estate. And it took me, prior to 1995, it took me 3 years of research to buy our first house in 95. And we had 92 houses at one time. We're down to 58 now. That's pretty much steady state. Again, we got into it to supplement my income. I worked for the Department of Defense for 26 years before I retired. And now pretty much, I'm retired and doing some consulting and stuff. And she runs we have 58 houses. We do all the property management, all the repairs. My son and I and a few other guys, if we need to pull permits for plumbing or electrical, pretty much do all the work ourselves. And my wife has a lot of good stories. Matter of fact, the one I was telling Mike earlier was that my wife she always tries to help folks. And so she had a lady move in last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, and she didn't have a microwave. So my wife gave her a microwave. Well, I guess it was maybe a month ago now. Anyway, my wife gave her a microwave because she felt sorry for her. And then the first of the month comes around and she didn't pay rent. So on the third of the month, we start evicting people and charging late fees. And my wife called and said, where's your rent? She said, well, I don't have any. I had to spend it on food for the microwave you gave me. So, at any rate, like I said, we have 58 houses now. We love it. We're going to be looking for some more in the near future. I have my youngest child is a 17-year-old son. He's going to be going to college in the fall. He's going to go into business, but he wants to get into real estate. He loves real estate. He loves dealing with the tenants, loves doing repairs. He's starting to read some material I put together on financing and just general real estate. So I told him, I said, if I could do it over again, if I was 17 years old and could live at home with mom and dad and get a 4-year degree, I said, I would do what he's going to do. So I'm very excited. He was going to actually sit in the meeting tonight, but he's, as a 17-year-old kid out playing basketball with his friends, he wanted to know if I mind if he missed. I said, of course not, But, so he'll be a member, Mike, as soon as I rein him in a little bit. But that's sort of our story. So we're at 58 houses now. My wife pretty much deals with all the tenants, and I do a couple other things.
Nice. Thanks, Tony. Thanks for sharing that. And I love that microwave story. That's crazy. So, hey, Raj, how about you? You want to jump in and introduce yourself and tell us about yourself?
So my name's Raj. I'm currently working at KPMG in accounting practice, like their tax real estate practice. I'm looking to get started. I don't own any real estate. I'm looking to buy a multi-unit, live in one of the units, rent out the other units, and then rinse and repeat that for a few years until I have enough to where I can go into real estate full time. Since I haven't gotten started, I really would love everyone's, like, what you've learned from, like, making mistakes or experience in property management and things along those lines.
Okay, great. Well, good. I'm glad you're here, and hopefully we'll give you some knowledge and kind of give you some help and direction. And I'm an advocate for education. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 30 years at seminars and books and tapes and I just believe you can't ever learn enough, and you keep educating yourself to get somebody else's idea and perspective, and it just helps you to grow and do more. So I think you're on the right track. So good for you. Dan, how about yourself? Would you care to share?
There you go. I am.
How you doing?
I'm back. Good evening, gents, and thank you for the invitation. I was thrilled to see it because, like Rajan, I'm new to real estate. My story is I started way back when in the corporate world. I got my education in international business. So I was in strategic planning for companies like American Hospital Supply and United Airlines. spent much of my time in Europe, living in my 20s in Paris and Amsterdam and all that. But I always wanted to have my own business. And my wife, her father started a company in 1939 making engraving pet ID tags, little tags that hang off the collar of a dog. And I thought that was a cute little business. But I wanted out of the corporate world, and they wanted to retire, and they asked me to help them sell it. And I looked at the market, and I figured out it was all fragmented and mom and pops, and 120 million dogs and cats running around America. So one thing led to another. We got involved and jump-started the company and did well with it. Raised a family. I live here in Barrington, 3 kids, and Tony's busy, but I'm going to remind him, I've been a partner with my wife for 30 plus years too. We've been married 33. And I always tell anybody who will listen, don't ever go into business with your wife. But I did, and we survived. We're still here 30 something years later. Anyway, I sold my business last fall, and it was time to retire, I thought at least. But I didn't really want to retire. And one thing led to, I'd always had an interest in real estate from the way back. When I was young, I felt like I didn't have the money. When I was in the middle, I didn't really have much more, and I definitely didn't have any time. I was doing my own business. But in retirement now, you know, I've got the time and the money, and so I thought this is perfect. And so I am just getting going. I've done a lot of the education, Mike. I'm totally on the same page with you there. I've spent a ton on tens of thousands of dollars on education, and I've got a good team behind me to support me. But I haven't really, I was really just getting there when the virus came. And so I haven't done a heck of a lot. I'm still like, you know, all dressed up and no place to go.
Sure.
So I'm kind of excited to get going. And I joined you guys because multifamilies definitely is something that is the direction I want to go in. Just one last point on this is I started my company called Next Gen Legacies because I've got 3 children, and I figured, all right, you know, I've got enough years left on this planet to do some damage, and I want to leave a legacy for them. So my goal is, you talked about goals, to leave at least 10 properties per kid. It's 30 pieces of property by the time I go. And so as a result, as you can see, I've got kind of like a bipolar view towards real estate. I know it's a long play, and I don't have a long time. So I've got 10 good years, I think, at least, to do some damage. And I want to put together the portfolio and then let the children enjoy the time benefits of real estate ownership.
Good for you. Great, great goal, that's for sure. And you know, you leave that legacy, and I think people really benefit from it. So hats off to you. So
I don't think it's uncommon.
Yeah. And you're in the right place because you can learn a lot. And like I mentioned earlier, I have a mastermind for multifamily investments on every other Monday. So it's a meetup group also. So we'll continue to meet virtually, even if they ever open up the world again. So I just think it's more convenient. So, hey, Biz, how about yourself? You want to jump in and introduce yourself to us?
Sure, I can do that. So sorry about my camera. I dropped my laptop, and unfortunately, the only thing that broke was my little adorable camera. So sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, so I'm actually an investor. I am stationed here in Chicago. My markets are both Chicago and Florida. I am also doing some private investing in New Hampshire that just came about. Basically, I want to network with other investors and build up a network of people who are interested in private lending or going into joint ventures. My portfolio consists of 6 buy and holds right now. Just made an offer for number 7. We'll see. I think that they have gone ahead. Want to explore other options for fix and flips or maybe even some wholesaling. But I'm not opposed to any of the above mentioned. Private investing is also in real estate, an avenue that I would like to consider doing more work in. Yeah, I'm kind of just about 2 years in now and just looking to network with other people who are like-minded and want to continue on with investing in real estate. I think it's a good market in Chicago, even with everything that's happening coming forward from the mayor. There are opportunities out there right now, as well as other places. So I'm just kind of hoping to network with other people.
Great. Well, I'm glad you're here. And you said you're stationed here. Are you in the service or?
No. I move around a lot. So I have just come back from California. I actually just got married in end of April. So we're looking to relocate hopefully by the end of next year or this year. We are looking for Florida. So we're not tied to Chicago. And I like to move around a lot. So real estate is everywhere. So it doesn't have to be in one area. So even if we do move along to Florida, we're still looking to keep a network of people who are interested in dealing with real estate investments here in Chicago because we have a good base here.
Great. Okay, thanks. Thanks for sharing. Maria, do you want to share? Brandon, how about you want to go?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Oh, there's Maria. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I didn't know if you could click off or if you just wanted to be quiet. So yeah,
no,
absolutely.
sorry. Sorry about that. I got kicked out of the Zoom meeting and I was struggling to get back, and I think I finally just got back. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad you made it back. So.
Yeah, is it okay for me to go then?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
All right. So my name is Mary, and I am in the south suburbs of Chicago. I guess I got into real estate investing. I call myself the accidental landlord, where I bought a property. It was going to be my house to live in. Life changed. I had spent so much time, energy, and money rehabbing it that I decided just to rent it out, start out with 1, and I'm up to a 7 right now.
Okay.
My goal, I guess, is I do this for my retirement. I'm a single woman, don't have anybody to rely on. I am just scared to death of not having enough money for retirement. So I just do the buy and hold, the rentals. Love to do a fix and flip, but right now I'm just doing the rental properties. And I took a couple of real estate investing classes a couple of years ago. They were fantastic. So I learned, how to buy them properly, a little bit about construction, refine, the BRRRR method, all of those. But what I noticed is that I think a lot of real estate investing clubs and organizations only focus on that part, but the property management part is also equally as important. There's a saying in the financial world, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And oftentimes, I would love to learn more strategies about how to be a better property manager, how to find the tenants better. I also always say that it's just a miracle, I think, that some landlords don't end up in jail or with fines because they're doing so many illegal, unethical things. So I would just love to learn more about, how to be a better property manager.
Okay, great. One thing that I always suggest to people, and one of the first things I always try to work with new investors on, is standards. Create standards for yourself, write them down, and don't deviate from them. I think that's the thing that keeps people on the same path all the time. And I'll give you an example. When I talk about standards, what are your standards for, renting to a new tenant? What credit score or FICO score will you not go below? What leasing standards will you not veer from? When I rent, if the prospective tenants don't have a 602 credit score or better, I won't rent to them. And you have to create an office manual or a manual and have everything written down, because if somebody should ever come back to you and say, hey, you know what, you rented to him and his credit was different than mine, you can show this is my standards, and that keeps you out of trouble. So just, some food for thought. So, hey, Brandon, you want to jump in now and tell us about yourself?
Yeah. So, yeah, my name is Brandon. I'm from Louis, but I just moved back to the Midwest up here to Chicago from LA. I was in LA right after college. A lot of good times out there. I was doing music out there, and I needed to come back to the Midwest and just get some more inspiration. But I've always been interested in real estate and even property management. Like I remember a few years ago, I was looking up like the job description, and I felt like that was something, not just something that I could do, but something that actually interested me, because I wanted to eventually start, owning properties and, renting them out. So, I joined this group when I saw it, and in the hopes of, being able to learn more about this field, anything that could help me to be successful, and, and also to be able to network and meet other people in this field, in hopes of being able to help them succeed as well, with the skills that I have. I have a background in sales, so, I can sell anything, and I can sell, water to a well, air to a fish, and also cars, phones, personal training. And I've learned a lot. I feel like sales is the most important skill, because anytime you have a conversation with someone, you're selling them on something, and they're selling you on why they shouldn't believe what you're saying.
Yeah. Everybody's a salesman. If you have kids, if you're married, you're a salesman. So might not be a product, but it's an intangible, right? So I'm glad you guys are all here. So, so one of the things I talked about was in the next round here that we would go around and just kind of talk about what you need in the way of knowledge and support, what your focus is, and what you'd like to gain. I talked early on about seasons, so what season of your life are you in right now in your investing game? Are you in a summertime where things are flourishing for you, or are you in a springtime where you're just starting to learn and you're just starting to grow? So what do you feel you need? What would help you the most to grow? One of the things I'd like you to keep a little focus on is the group itself. What would you like to excuse me, what would you like to gain? I know everybody said I want more knowledge, but what does that mean? Can you really say exactly what that knowledge is? What exactly do you feel that you need to know? Because a lot of times we walk around in this space that's unconscious, right? We don't know what we don't know. So if you can put words or a thought to what you need, it kind of sometimes will help you learn a little bit more. So, Tony, why don't you take a run at it?
Sure, Mike. In terms of the first question, getting out of the group, by trade, I'm an engineer, and so is my wife. So we think a certain way, and most of the time it's very similar because of I don't say our training, but because of in engineering, you're taught you start with a problem, define the problem. Here's an answer. There's only one solution. So what I found when I worked for DoD was that when I surrounded myself with people who had business degrees or worked in sales, for example, or marketing or in the health profession, I saw a completely different perspective. They looked at things that I couldn't see, and you could put me in a room for 10 years and I wouldn't see it there. I just don't think that way. So what I like with this group and other people in general was getting their perspectives on solving a problem that I mean, not even, like you said, Mike, the unknown unknowns. I don't know what I don't know, because I wouldn't have thought of it. So when we talk about, let's say, a simple thing as a tenant's late on rent, what do you do? Well, we've been through that literally thousands of times. We have a process, but I'm sure other people have a different one. I'd like to just hear what people do. They may think it's not different, but to me it would be different, because my wife and I do things in a certain way. And like you said, we've had standards for many, many years and policies and procedures to keep us out of trouble, But that's one of the things that I always would look for in groups like this, is getting other people's perspectives, because you don't know what you don't know. And a person could say something and it's like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Even though we've been doing this for a long time, we probably know sort of like when you look at Excel or Word, you think you understand it, but you know about 2% of it. And I probably know about 1 or 2% of property management. So I'm really anxious to learn from people in this group here,
one of the things I remember, you just brought up something interesting. When you go all of a sudden a brainstorm, right? Somebody says something or shares something with you, and you go, "Oh my God, why didn't I ever think of that?" What came to mind for me right away was the first time somebody told me about showing properties to multiple people at one time. I used to always, if somebody called me and they wanted to go see a property that I was renting, I'd run out there right away. I'd miss dinner. I'd leave early on a Saturday morning. I might work a Sunday afternoon, and run out there to meet the tenant. And then what if they don't show up? Now you just wasted a couple hours of time, right? So somebody told me one time, always do group showings. You tell your prospect, you know what? I'm going to show this place at 6 o'clock on Tuesday or 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. You pick, and if you schedule 6 or 8 people and half of them don't show up, you still are showing the place. Where if somebody doesn't show up and it's one showing, you're kind of lost out there. So, Brandon, you want to jump back in?
Yeah. So I've actually seen this question a lot on Facebook, and I've heard like opposing views on it. When it comes to investing in property, is it best to pay with cash or to leverage credit and get a business loan?
Well, I'll answer it, and then we'll kind of open it up for some other discussion. But when it comes to, I'm a leverage guy. I would rather leverage. One of the things I teach in one of my classes is I teach that if you have $1 million and you want to buy $1 million in Google stock, you're going to spend the whole $1 million to buy that Google stock. But the power of leverage, and real estate gives you that power of financing and leverage. I could go buy a $5 million property with $1 million in equity, or I could buy a $1 million property with $250,000 in equity and keep $750,000 of the $1 million that I have. So you can lever up and typically buy a lot more real estate with, the capital that you have. I don't think cash properties are that big of an incentive. So there's other ways to look at it too, but I don't know if somebody else wants to chime in on that at all or has a comment.
Hey, Mike, I could just maybe offer a little comment here, at least how my wife and I have done it when we were buying houses. We were looking in the price range of $30,000 to $70,000 in the Detroit area. What we did was we always, and what I talk to folks about, I always look at the end first. So we do, I want to say reverse leverage, but we always paid for houses in cash. We always paid for the repairs in cash, but we knew before we bought the property what the repair costs would be and what the after repaired value would be. For example, let's say I bought a house for $30,000 and I knew it was going to be $20,000 in repairs. And I also knew, which is key, that at the end of it was going to be worth $100,000. Okay, I wouldn't sell it. What we would do is we'd have $50,000 in the property. I'd go to the bank and get a cash out refi, 80% mortgage. All right, so 80% of $100,000 is an $80,000 mortgage. They write a check to me for $80,000 because it's not encumbered. Okay, I pay myself back to $50,000 and made $30,000 tax free. So I use the leverage on the other side. But I found, at least in my little area here, if I offer a house for, let's say, $30,000 cash, no inspections, no contingencies, and then another person offers $40,000, they have to sell the house and they want inspections, there's a 50-50 chance I'll get that property because the seller knows it's going to be gone. So I use leverage, but it's on the other side. And so again, before we even buy a house, we know we can get out of the deal. I have 2 or 3 banks lined up. They know my credit score. They know my finances. And they already told me you're pre-approved to go ahead and get this 80% mortgage. What you don't want to do is get into a deal and you can't get out of it. So we always, and Mike and I talk a lot, we look at the exit strategy before I get into something. So that's just another way of using leverage.
Yeah, great concept. Mary, you want to take a stab at that and kind of jump in and
Yeah, I hate to sound like a lawyer, but I would say it just depends. If the numbers are a little tight. So let me backtrack. Other people's money, using credit would optimally be the best thing, because Mike, you're right. You can buy more real estate that way, but sometimes the numbers are tight, and let's say it also will depend on what type of credit you can get. If you're paying 14%, and that's all you can get, especially if you're just a novice, you're just starting out, and that's all you can get, boy, it's really tough to make the numbers work from that perspective. A cheap house, not a lot of rehab, I can do something quick, probably do credit. If it's something that's going to be a little bit longer, numbers are a little tighter, I would probably do something cash related.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
I'll just support the leverage side of the equation. I totally agree. I think there's good leverage, and you can be over leveraged. Not a good place to be. You can't suffer even the smallest headwind, and your boat can sink. But if you're smart about it and you keep it under control and your ratio is correct, as you were saying, I mean, the leverage aspect, if you can put down $200,000 and get $200,000 in stock, good for you. But if you put $200,000 down and you've got a $1 million property, well, think about the appreciation. It's $1 million that's appreciating. It's not 200,000, and it's. I think of leaving equity in your house. All right, we all understand it's really stupid to put money in your mattress or under your mattress, right? It's not earning anything. It's doing spot. Well, it's like if you're leaving all that equity, and if you've got a house that's free and clear, that's good for you. But it's like putting all your money under the mattress. You got to get it out of the house, unlock it, and put it to work. So that's my thought.
Yeah. And what's funny, and Tony, you kind of alluded to this, but what's your exit? I think if you're going in and you know how you're going to get out, that's really key. So that can kind of dictate how you're going to purchase and what you're going to do with that property. So one thing I always teach is what's your exit plan, and know what that exit is from the day that you go to contract and are going to buy that property. Before you get to closing, have that all planned out. And I think that's something a lot of people don't teach. Over the years, I've never really heard people talking about designing and building an exit plan. And that's one of my big focuses is I try to teach people, think about what your exit is. Like Raj, if you're going to go buy a 2-unit, it sounds like you're going to buy that 2-unit, save a little bit of money and go buy something else. But how long are you going to keep that for? And what's your exit? I always think that we should know, how many years am I going to keep it? How much depreciation am I going to take over time? There's a lot of questions to ask yourself when you formulate that plan. So, Biz, any comments?
Are we discussing Brandon's existential question there?
Yeah, you could talk about that, or you could talk about where you're at, what season you're in, what do you need to learn, what are you hoping to gain?
I guess I'll answer both. Brandon, I just want to kind of point it out to you. You're going to get a lot of education from a lot of different sources, and they're all different because everyone has their standard and how they practice their business. Pick one and stick with it until you want to move somewhere else and go in a different direction if things are not working. That's the best advice that I can give you on that, because there are conflicting educational people out there. And honestly, I picked one and it's working for me for right now. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Raj, you want to chime back in at all?
I mean, I don't really have any experience, but to me, like, it makes the most sense to use leverage, just because, like you guys said, you can control more real estate, and it's appreciating on the whole value, and real estate tends to outpace inflation. So yeah, you're gonna get more value for your money just by having it in a real estate that's already being leveraged. So it's like you put 20% down, but the whole thing's uh, appreciating at like 3%. So that's a huge return, which you can probably not get in the stock market easily.
Yeah. And one of the things, if you're buying larger multifamily properties and, in the commercial sector, so, you can buy 2 to 5 units and still get a residential loan. When you go above a 5 unit into 6 units and greater, now you're in the commercial arena. But when you're buying properties that are 50, 100, 150 unit properties, you want to look at the IRR, which is the internal rate of return. And it's a different calculation than just looking at your return on investment. So when you invest that money, you get that, you might get a 12, an 18, a 20% return on your investment. But when you look at the IRR, that takes into consideration the time value of the money, how much money you put in, the leverage aspect of it. And you'll typically see most institutional investors and most, if you follow the smart money, the institutional investors look at that IRR number to see where that is. And if it's typically not in a low to mid 20 range, they'll stay away from a deal because of that. But they take into consideration a lot more things than you typically take into consideration. So one of the questions I ask people on the property management side today is, what is the biggest challenge that as a property manager that you're experiencing in today's environment? And I almost like to say, leave the coronavirus thing on the side, but because, this is going to go away and it will change. And yes, I think there's going to be some new norms, but, real estate and renting properties probably going to stay pretty consistent to how it's been over the years. So as a property manager, as somebody who's an investor and owns real estate, what are the biggest challenges that you see right now, or we're even seeing before the coronavirus piece? Mary,
Mike, this is Mary. Yeah, I do actually. I have a specific question for that. I'm about to list 2 properties for rent here any day now, and everybody was doing the virtual showings. I'm curious if anybody has done those, and if so, how have you done, like Facebook, what is it called, the meeting or Zoom meetings? And then Mike, you made a comment about you don't think it's going to change, but I'm wondering if people now are going to be more inclined to do virtual showings in the future.
Tony, you want to run at that?
Sure. What we've done is, I guess a couple of things. In terms of the showings, we and Mike says we need to raise our rates, but we're always, to my wife's credit, we're always at 100% occupancy. Now we only have 58 houses, but they're always full. When we have a tenant leave, my wife already has a house rented before the person leaves. She's amazing at this, because we use this. We have a website that I'm just putting together, but we have something on Rent Links. It's like $450 a year. And we have and there's photographs, maybe 15, 20, 30 pictures of each house on it. So the people know the neighborhood, they see the house, and pretty much they know, we tell them what the rent is. And so we've been doing, I don't want to say virtual showings, but again, she rents, I would say probably 8 or 9 out of 10 houses we rent. People don't even, they always already give us a deposit application fee before they even see the inside, just based on the pictures.
Wow.
It's amazing, So the pictures I found on the internet are absolutely critical. And I don't know if you're familiar with Rent Links, but I think it's like $450 a year or something. And we have all our properties on there, and they're attached to, I think, 20 or 25 other websites. And that's, so again, we never have any vacancies, Now Mike says our rents are too low, and it might be, but.
So for those of us who don't have 58 properties, though, it's probably a little bit, much. I also always try to get my properties rented before the tenants leave, and I just will list them on Zillow. I don't just take the crappy pictures. I'll take the nice pictures. I'll send them in the box brownie, get them all really nice looking. So I do recognize the importance of really nice pictures, but I'm still just kind of wondering now with the virtual tours, if they're going to continue to be so important. Should we continue to do them?
Is there any place today that you can like do a virtual, take a movie of your property and post that online where somebody could go look at it at any time?
I do that on Facebook Marketplace. It's very
Okay.
easy to attach the videos on there. But I'm wondering, people, I've heard or I've read, because there's been so much information disseminated with the virus, that instead of people showing up at the door, they're doing like virtual walkthroughs. Open this drawer, open the closet. Hey, can you do this? Can you zoom here? That's sort of what I've heard, but I just wasn't sure how people were doing it or if they were doing it.
Yeah, a number of my friends in the real estate business, that's how they're doing it. They're actually walking through
Yep.
with an iPhone or an iPad and either doing FaceTime or Zoom, one of those platforms, and they're
Yeah,
showing,
okay.
everything under
Right.
cabinets and, doorways and closets. And
Right. Okay.
so,
One of the ways that we've just as an idea here, we did this years ago, and we've changed since. But for a couple of years we did this. We would essentially let people go in the houses themselves. We would say at 1 o'clock, Joe Smith, you go at 1 o'clock, give us your, send us your driver's license and address and phone number, and here's a lockbox combination. Another person comes at 2 o'clock, another person comes at 3 o'clock. At the end of the day, my maintenance guy, or I'd go down there and change the code on it. So we would do that, and just because, again, we were assuming that they're not going to steal a furnace in the middle of the day, and we had their information. But that was a way to do it that we did years ago, and it worked for a couple of years for us until we changed.
Yeah, I have heard of that, and a lot of my real estate investing friends do that. I don't do it because I prefer the face-to-face meetings, because you get to learn a lot about the people when you meet them in person. I'm sure all of you have heard, people tend to run on and on and on. They're talking and talking. The information that they reveal, just the personal feeling. I don't know. I prefer to do the showings just so I can get the feeling for the people and listen to them and meet them.
I think there's a lot to be said for that piece of it. I've always said that you can tell a lot from a tenant's car when they pull up.
Yep. The clothes they're wearing, how they talk. I mean, just there's just a lot of that you can get from those face-to-face meetings, I have found. But and if you got 58 properties, you got 200 properties, that's just not feasible.
Right.
Mike, to get to your other question, and it was interesting during this whole coronavirus, when it first started back in the spring, I went to a couple of the lenders and said, hey, we're going to have issues. Can you give us any type of relief? And to our amazement, we've only had one tenant out of 58 give us a hard time about paying. And they're paying, they're just slow. I wouldn't have believed it. So it's amazing. We were expecting a lot, and it didn't happen at all.
So the one response that I got from a property manager today, that when I posed that question about what's the biggest challenge out there today, is he talked about the CARES Act and the inability to be able to evict somebody today as a result. And I can see where that would be a challenge and where that would be where it'd be an issue. But if you look at the statistics today still show that rents collected by mid-month have been about 82% for the last couple of months. So it's a little bit off a traditional mark, but it's still pretty strong. So I think it's a lot stronger than some of the early speculation about it was when it came out.
Yep.
Biz, any thoughts?
We're seeing that too. All of our renters actually paid on time, except one, and he had pretty much 95% of the rent and just settled up the month after. So I don't foresee any of them being late next month either, even with two of them not working because of the stimulus checks that they received, and they got their care because of their business, their own business. We were lucky in that effect. I can see why other people are not that lucky. And I think this goes back to what Maria was talking about, is having that one-on-one personal kind of touch with the tenants when you're vetting them out at the beginning, and knowing what they're capable of, knowing what their life is and what they're going to be able to move forward with. And we picked our tenants specifically because of those actions. We prefer to have people who own their own businesses because they're more reliant. They're going to be a little bit more responsible with the property itself. And they're going to have a better demeanor with us as the property managers. So, yeah.
And you know, you said it's standards too, right? So I think that the more standards we have in place, the easier it makes our business. And you know, it's like designing that tenant in your own mind so you know when they show up that this is the right tenant. Anybody else have any other comments? So let me throw this out. You know, Maria, Biz, you know, you guys are in the business. You've got some rentals. What are you looking for that could be helpful for you? And you know, do you have something going on right now that we could brainstorm on?
I just remember, I forgot the name of the first person who talked a little while ago. It's just sharing the information. I remember about 2 months ago sitting down with one of my real estate friends, and we began sharing our processes and how do you do this? Let me look at your lease. Let me look at your application. It was amazing, the exchange of ideas that we had. You think that your processes are good. You think that your forms are good. You think that everything's okay until you start comparing. There's always just better or more efficient ways to do something. So I'm just really looking forward to seeing how everybody's doing everything and sharing those ideas and seeing what I can do to, you know, improve mine.
You know, it's funny you say that. My wife and I talked when we first started in our first rent. I think our lease was about maybe a paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs long. And every time we went to court and every time we think we got hosed, we added a line and we're up to about 35 pages, you know?
Yeah, that exactly. When I sat down with my friend, I'm like, oh, wow, that's a good clause. Let me throw that in my lease and vice versa.
Absolutely, Tony, absolutely. I was actually going to say that. I was going to say, if you guys can share some insight about what you have in terms of leases, I know that I'm going to have, with this new building that I'm just about to purchase, I'm going to have two units that are going to have 2 bedroom and 1 bath, and it's going to be on top of a retail. So if anybody has any kind of clauses that are going to encompass that kind of arena, that would be really helpful. So I would love to share.
So you have a 2 bedroom, 2 bath apartment above a retail situation?
Yes, yeah, the retail tenant wants to stay. It's up to my discretion whether he can meet the new threshold, which is going to be the new market rate. But there's the second floor and then the third floor, each are their own apartments, about 2,000 square feet. Yeah, it's a synagogue on the retail space for right now if he decides to stay. So I've never had retail. This will be my first mixed use building. I've always stayed with residential. But yeah, so anybody that could give some insight as to if they have owned a mixed use before, the retail, that'd be great.
Sorry, no.
Yeah, I personally have not. I've always stayed in the residential sector, and retail always scared me. So, and
see, so this is a good question. Like, where are everybody getting their leases from? I've had friends who said, oh, I just go down to whatever and I load them off or download them off, you know, whatever. I'm like, oh my God, that's awful. I mean, are people creating their own? I use a specific website. So that website that I use, easylandlordforms.com, I'm positive has the mixed commercial use leases on there. I personally haven't used them, but I know they have them.
Okay. I'll check that one out. What did you say it was, Maria?
easylandlordforms.com.
Okay. Yeah, the one I've been using is a simplified version for the Illinois residential leases. And then we've started to add on just because of how
Yep.
how it is in our neighborhood, and helping our tenants become aware of how to best use the house.
So what kind of standards do you put in place then? And this might be something to think through, how for the interaction between the tenant and the retail space. So between the residential and the retail space. I've heard horror stories in the past of, either the retail people getting upset with the residential people, or vice versa. So, maybe think through even yourself about how you'll handle situations like that, or how you'll stipulate that in your leases, going into the situation.
Yep, it's going to be interesting.
That's how we learn though, right? We take on a new task, we take on a new venture, and we learn as a result of it. And that's how we grow. And I think doing what you're doing now, it's one thing I've never had experience with though, is the mixed use building. So one thing, Tony and I have had this discussion for years, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Tony lives in a market that he does month-to-month leases. And I have always done 12-month leases or longer, because I feel that, you have more security in that. And especially if you're going to the bank and refinancing. So I have always looked at it from a standpoint that when I buy a multi-unit building, I want to have 12-month leases in place, because if they were all month-to-month, if you go to sell that property, and exit, the new buyer is going to look at those leases and say, well, I don't have guaranteed cash flow. This all ends next month or in 90 days. Where if you have a 12-month lease and you go to sell the property, that new buyer's looking at it saying, oh, okay, so I have this locked in income. See, because the investments I always did were market rate apartments, because they were already functional, already people living in them. And when you go to sell those to the end buyer, they want to make sure that they have that money locked in. And Tony has a different perspective on that, and I'm going to let him share that. And then I want to hear from anybody else what their thoughts are about how they do it, how they do their leases.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Ours, since we're single family homes, I think certainly, generally the banks don't use the income approach. It's the market approach for value. I think for multifamily, the year lease makes some sense. But from our perspective, when we got into this, the banks wanted to see your yearly leases. What we quickly found out was if people people just broke the lease after 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and I couldn't collect. I can't get a 6 or 8 month judgment on them, so I'd have to go back, re-rent. The judges in our district won't. For example, a person was there for 3 months, they won't give me a 9-month judgment on it. My order as a landlord is immediately rent the property as fast as I can. And I would get it generally rented within 30 days. So I guess I could go ahead and sue the person for 30 days, but they didn't have it. That's why they had to leave in the first place. The other thing is we have a zero, absolute no tolerance for people that don't pay rent. We start evicting people on the 3rd of the month. Rent's due on the 1st, 3rd of the month. And it's easier to get people out, due to non-payment of rent, or we can just evict people because they give the neighbors a hard time. They give the police a hard time. All of our houses are within about 4 miles of each other. Same city, same police, same mayor, same city council. So we know everybody. And if I have a bad tenant, I don't want to have to wait 11 more months till it runs out. I just evict them. Now that doesn't happen often, but it does happen, there is, again, we tried the year leases, and again, in our market for single family homes, it didn't work, but I can certainly see if you're having a multifamily where the banks or investor wants to look at the income approach, showing them that income for a year makes all sorts of sense, Hey, Mike, guys, I'm going to have to sign off. My daughter just pulled in the driveway with a new F-150, so I got to see what she got me into.
Okay.
Nice seeing and meet everybody. Look forward to talking in 2 weeks.
Bye, Tony.
Bye.
Bye.
Dan, how about you? Anything you want to, throw out there to get some ideas on or thoughts on?
Well, when you asked at the beginning, what were we trying to get out of this? And I thought about it. It was pretty quick for me. two things. When I saw that you were meeting, I wanted to join because as I intend to get involved in multifamily and single family, and I don't intend to be the property manager. I hope not to be. I want this to be as passive an income as it can be. And so my question is basically, what do I have to know to really be good at picking the best property managers? Because I want to build a team. You know, I need good lawyers, I need good accountants, I need good property managers. And so how do you go and shop for a good property manager? And, you know, it's a service you can't tell up front until you actually, you know, you're in bed with them. And the flip side of that is, how do I become a good client of a property manager? What do I need to deliver to be, you know, make my property manager think that, oh my God, Dan's the best client we've had in years. You know, I'll walk through walls for that guy.
Great question. I like how you said, what do I need to do to be a good client for the property manager? I think every property manager wants to have a good client. You know, we've got a couple people on the call here who are managing all their own properties. You know, I've managed a number of third-party properties for other owners, and I think what you look for is, first you have to make a decision whether you want a big firm or a small firm. You want a mom and pop? You want somebody who's going to be easier to get a hold of, where you're not just going to be another account to them, where you're going to have a relationship with somebody. So, you know, I think at the level that, you know, if you're going to own hundreds and hundreds of units, then to be with a bigger company probably makes more sense. But if you're going to own smaller amounts of units, you are going to maybe want to be with a smaller company just because you might get better service, right? And I've been on both sides of the spectrum. It's not always about cost. You know, you could go to one property manager and they charge you 10% and go to somebody else and they charge you 7%, but it's not about cost. It's what are you going to get? You know, how quick do they collect your rent? And then how quick is that rent made available to you? How quick are they going to respond to repairs? So if a tenant calls up, see, the whole idea behind property management, right, is that that property manager becomes the liaison between the owner and the tenant. Now, the owner wants a property manager because they don't want to deal with the tenant. They don't want to go show the property. They don't want to sign leases. They don't want to meet the people. And they certainly don't want to be called for a plugged up toilet when one of their children put a D-cell battery down the toilet and flushed the toilet. So, and I say that because this has happened to me in the past, but so that tenant, the landlord wants to, you know, have this party in the middle to handle all of that. And you, as a owner, probably don't want to be bothered unless it's something major. So one thing I always did with my third-party tenants on the residential side was I would say, okay, if we have a repair that needs to be done, I'm allowed to spend up to $150 of your money on one single repair, and before I have to call you and get approval to spend any more. So what that would cover is if a thermocouple went out on the furnace, or in the middle of winter, or if the toilet backed up, or if there was a leaky faucet or a leaky toilet. You don't need to be, you know, inundated with all those little things. But at the end of the month, you get a good report that would show you exactly what happened and what got done, and the receipts from the contractor or the receipts from the plumber, whoever was there to fix that. So make sure that you're going to get complete documentation from the property manager so that you have that trust component in place for you, so that you know now that you've made the right decision. And I think you said something interesting. You know, Mary could refer somebody to you, Biz could refer somebody to you, but until you get in that relationship and until you go through those first few months where they've collected your rent and you've gotten it, you've gotten your portion of it. Now you know that you've gotten into a good relationship. And here's the thing I teach people about building a team. Whether it's a realtor, whether it's a contractor, whether it's a lender, make sure you have more than one around, because you never know when that one that you might have a relationship with and that you've built your business with is going to get too busy, not be able to pay enough attention to you, not handle things the way you felt they should be handled. I always looked at it this way in the construction business, that if I had a couple of contractors around, now I knew that, and if they knew about each other, now I knew that they were keeping their pencil sharp. So when I was getting a quote on work that needed to be done, they would be making sure that they were trying to give me the best quote. So, it's probably some long-winded stuff to what you're asking. And, I would open this up too to Mary and Biz, because they have a little bit of experience. What can you guys throw at that conversation?
At this stage, I would not trust any property management company. You have your best interest at heart, no matter big or small. Unfortunately, I think that you're just a number to them. You're just a client. And even if you give them a certain amount allocated for repairs, I guess just my experience working with contractors, man, those guys try to cheat you all the time, where, the repair could be a little $10 part, but because you're not there, because the property manager's a middleman, they're going to charge you $200. So I guess I just have a hard time trusting that people are going to do what's in your best interest.
Both Mary and Mike hit on exact points, and I agree with them 100%. It comes back down to you and what your business is going to have as a standard and of practice. Hold true to what you have as standards and show the property manager how you want to do business. You become the professional. You become the dictator on how you want the relationship to move. I would never be married to a property manager, but I would never also just keep going through one. And Mike hit on price. I'm torn on that one. I kind of agree, but I disagree as well. Because when you find a service provider that wants to work with you because of the standards that you hold true to, then you pay them well, because they're going to work best for you at that point. So there's good parts and bad parts about that. So agree and disagree. But yeah, you guys have hit on all of the touch points properly.
Hope that helps. So, it's definitely food for thought. So how about Raj? Anything you want to throw out that you maybe would like some feedback on tonight?
What's like the base? I know you talked about like we should have like a criteria at the start before you find tenants, but what's a baseline criteria that you should have at least in just like looking around in Chicago? I'm looking, well, at least for me, I'm looking around like the heart of Chicago, McKinley Park, and like Bridgeport area.
So are you talking about baseline criteria for purchasing or for managing?
Sorry, yeah, sorry for like managing, like for having tenants.
Okay. Well, I know Mary's getting ready to rent a couple things here. Mary, why don't you take a stab at that?
I think that is a crucial question. So when people contact me via text, email, phone call, whatever the mechanism, I have my baseline criteria already set up that I review with them. If they pass it, I do a showing. If they don't, I'm not going to waste their time or my time because they're not a qualified applicant. hopefully I'll remember all of these off the top of my head, but I have a minimum credit score, and I have properties in slightly different areas, so I'll raise it or lower it, depending on the area. But I believe my minimum is like 620, 640, something like that credit score. For my nicer property, I'll raise it up to 680. Income has to be at least 2.5 times the rent. Oh, what is it? Something else. Oh, I want, and this touches upon a question that somebody was mentioning earlier about the month to month. My minimum stay is 2 years. I'm trying to remember. Credit score, income, stay, and they have to pass a credit criminal background check. I might be missing something, but I will absolutely go over at least those minimum criteria.
Boy, I thought I was tough. Certainly glad I'm not looking for a place to live right now.
All of my tenants have been well above that criteria too.
That's good. See, I think when you have good standards like that, what winds up happening is you attract, good tenants based on your standards.
Yep.
So, Biz, any comments or thoughts?
I was going to be quiet because I had one additional one. I also will not take anyone that doesn't show that they were at their employment for for less than 3 months.
Huh.
That's great. And when you talk about employment, another thing to look at too is income. So I always want to see that their income is at least 3 times the amount of rent. So if my rent's 1,000, I want to make sure they're making at least 3,000 a month.
Oh, you're more ruthless than Mary.
Yep. I did 2.5.
Yeah, but see, now Maria's at 620 credit score. I'm only at a 602. So there's some give and take on both sides of that, right?
Yep.
So.
And of course, it depends what shows up on their credit report and everything.
Right. So. All right, guys. Any last thoughts or comments?
I have one request. I'd love to keep in touch with you guys. Is this going to be an ongoing situation, or can we exchange contact info?
Sure. So I am going to plan to do this meeting for property management masterminding every other week. So our next one, let me look at a calendar here real quick. Tonight is the second here. Tonight is the 15th, right? So the next one would be on the 29th, again on Monday. And I guess one of the things I'm trying to explore, because I'm new to this whole meetup thing, and the other group I'm doing on the 22nd, which is, so I'm doing the investment group every other week, and I'm doing the property management group every other week. Is this 7 o'clock time slot a good time slot on a Monday night?
Yes.
It is. Okay, good. So, I'm just going to keep planning this meeting. So I'll send another invitation out through the Meetup platform. So you'll be able to get that. I'm going to go ahead. If you guys want to get a hold of me, you can reach me on my website at mycoreintentions.com. Send me an email through there. I have a free download actually on my website. It's the 7 steps to a quick multifamily acquisition. So if you can go there and download that. I'm willing to share my information in the chat here if you guys want it. So if you guys want to reach out to me at all, if you look in the chat, there's my information. You can write that down. If you want to reach out to me at all, feel free to shoot me an email, and I can, you know, I can connect us all through email if you want to do that. So just let me know how you want to connect, and you know, if I can, you know, spend any time with anybody, don't hesitate to give me a call. Like I said, I love teaching, I love coaching, so if I can help anybody in any way, I'll make myself available.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Say it again, Biz.
I said, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, sure.
And Mike, you're welcome to share my info. I'm going to get it in here too, but if you end up sharing everybody's, you know, include me.
Okay.
Team Bandle. Where'd you get that name?
What did you say, Dan?
I said, where did you get Team Bandle seed?
Oh, Team B&E. Oh, that's Team Biz and Eddie. It's my husband.
Okay,
We're a team.
there you go.
You guys want me to share this with everybody?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys. Any last thoughts or comments from anybody?
I do have a question about like the evictions and all that in Illinois, because I know it's got to be different than California. Because like in California, I guess because there's so many people there and they try to combat homelessness, it's not like if you're evicting someone from your property, it's not like a simple process. You can't just kick someone out. Same way if like you just let someone stay with you for a month and they start receiving mail, you can't just kick them out. Like it's a whole like process. What is it like in Illinois?
It's a process in Illinois. And Chicago, Cook County is probably one of the toughest places for evictions. Were you going to say something, Mary?
I agree with you. One of my friends is in, I forgot what county Aurora's in. Is that Will? DuPage?
Kane.
Anyway, Kane, thank you. They're in that county. He was able to evict somebody in a week and a half. I mean, that's going through the entire legal process. And
Yeah.
I was floored because thank goodness I haven't had to go through Cook County yet, but I've heard it's months and months and months.
Yeah. DuPage County, Lake County are probably the easiest. And that's the first time I heard a real good story about Kane County. So that's interesting.
Yeah, Brandon, I just came from California, so I wasn't doing real estate investing there, but I am aware of the law and how it definitely favored the tenant rather than the landlord. Here, it's not such a weighted percentage for the tenant. It's a little bit more even, but yes, it is. I remember from California, it was very tenant.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember a lot of people were squatting.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of people were squatting.
Oh, yeah.
I owned, I had a big footprint in Dallas, and it was probably the easiest place I've ever been able to get somebody evicted. As long as I served a 5-day notice, a 10-day notice, I could walk in on the 15th day. I'd have them in court by the end of the month, and they'd be out. The process could take me 20 to 30 days, and they'd have to move out. But in Illinois, I've had it take, I've got some nightmare stories. So,
Wow.
I've only had to evict one tenant here. And it was not bad because she literally she couldn't pay. She didn't tell me. So it was in my favor at that point. So the process went pretty quick. And I had her out in probably 20 days.
And how
That's not
much
too
does
bad.
a typical foreclosure cost?
I would, if you figured $1,500, I think that you would be safe. That's a safe number. So, depending
Not
on
too
length,
bad.
depending on length of time and where. Now it could vary. It could be more and it could be less too. So,
Depending if they fight it.
And that's mostly on legal fees, not, court fees?
right.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to run, but it was great meeting you. I look forward to this.
Yeah, me as well. So,
Thank you, everyone.
yep, guys, we'll send something
Thank
out in early next week for the following week, and we'll go from there. It's been nice meeting everybody. I'm glad you guys been here, and if I can, help anybody, don't hesitate to call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Ciao.